Good morning from beautiful Brisbane, Australia. How are you this morning? Welcome to Complex PTSD TV. My name's Linda. I'm your certified trauma recovery coach. And today we're going to be talking about dissociation and disconnection and how we're disconnecting from our trauma and the impacts that it's having on our day-to-day life. If you're here for the first time, welcome. Remember to hit the bell or subscribe, like, share for all the people who are still our silent majority when it comes to discussing mental health. It's great to have you with me, and if you do all that, you know when the next video gets uploaded. Now, I really want to share with you some very interesting information around dissociation. So for those that, hello Ali, good to see you. For those that have followed me for some time, you know that I developed trauma-informed movement to help get us consciously out of the dissociation. So I've been doing that for some time now, and it really works effectively. And then I hit this speed hump. So I was doing really well. I was seeing lots of clients. I've got lots of work on my plate at the moment for America and so much more. And then all of a sudden, I noticed that my workload started decreasing. And I was like, what's going on? You know, what's happening internally for me? And I realized that I was not feeling any joy. And I went, what's going on? This is not who I am. This is not part of me. And I didn't know what was happening internally. So I went looking for some answers, and I'd actually made a meme about it some time ago. And when we do experience trauma in childhood, it has us disconnecting from ourself. Okay, so along the way, we've talked about how we need to develop our sense of self. And we do this in childhood so that we can survive. So think about survival mode and how when we go into feeling it in our gut, we know that we're on survival mode. So that's one way you can tell when you're on survival mode, is that you can really feel it in your gut, and you can't actually feel getting your air into your heart area. So the repeat pattern is to unconsciously numb, as we've never learned how to manage or how to label, how to experience the world from a healthy perspective. So there's a whole range of information that we've never learnt, we've never been given, and our brain automatically goes to, right, hyperarousal, so fight, flight, freeze or fawn. And then it can be so subtle. This is the problem. When we get further down into our recovery pathway, I've found that when it happens, it becomes really, really subtle. It's not like when we have anxiety attacks and they're obvious. Okay, I'm panicking, the anxiety, I'm shutting down. You can feel your whole system shutting down. This disconnection that happens over multiple parts of the brain is not necessarily upfront and obvious, because we keep going about our day on automatic pilot. So what happened was, I found these signs that our brain may have disconnected and we have unresolved trauma to address. So a lack of joy is the first one. Okay, so if you've got a real lack of joy, then we're going to be looking at disconnection and how to get back to connection. Binging habits to avoid daily pain. So am I eating? Am I drinking? Am I using drugs? Am I shopping? What am I binging on in order to avoid the feeling that there's unresolved trauma coming up? Anxiety, a lack of trust in others and in ourselves to make decisions. Okay, so part of developing our sense of self is that we work into building the ability to trust my own decisions no matter what the outcome. It's nice to know what the outcome of our decision is going to be, but sometimes we have to learn to I'm going to trust that I make this decision, and then whatever happens afterwards, I'm going to be able to either learn how to manage what comes next, or I'm going to work through it, all right? And I'm going to turn it around into a positive, healthy thing for me. And it's not just learning, have I done something wrong? That's not the type of learning we're talking about at all. We're talking about learning the different dynamics and how to manage situations in life that we were never taught about. So think, for example, like inner critic, we didn't come with a manual that says this is how we've got to work through and sort out our inner critic, not by a long shot. And I could go on with this and this. We didn't come with a manual how to raise our kids differently than how we were raised. We didn't know how to manage and label our emotions. And the list just goes on and on and on of the things that we didn't know how to do. And often at the beginning of recovery, we didn't know how to do them either. Okay? So part of recovery is learning all the things that we didn't know we needed to learn. Okay, so then we can look for depression and exhaustion, hypervigilance and hypovigilance. Now, it can be really hard to detect when the depression trigger goes off in our brain, because I know that I have trouble recognizing when it goes off because I don't actually feel depressed. So what I did this time was say, am I feeling a lack of joy internally? And I went, yes. And I went, oh my goodness, why? There is nothing in my current day-to-day life that says I should be feeling a lack of joy. And that's when we go, okay, there's unprocessed trauma. One of the biggest things I notice is that every time I improve and life becomes full of joy and happy, and I really love what I do, is that next thing you know, the brain I call it the brain derails, because the brain's not used to having all this joy and fully functioning and so on. And then I have to go, okay, I need to sit down and I need to work out what the unresolved trauma is. And the other thing is, the nightmares come. So all the unprocessed emotions in the amygdala start to come out because the brain's like, oh wow, she's doing really well. Now it's time to process all this trauma. Now the other day, I want to share this with you because the other day I woke up from a nightmare and I was like, what's going on? What's underneath all of this? And I sat down and I quickly wrote out what the things were that were happening for me in the nightmare. And if I can find the list, that'd be really good. Sorry, I should have had this ready for you from the get-go, but I didn't even think about having it for you. And now I can't find it. Okay, so there were things like there. I felt unloved. I felt that my needs weren't being met. I felt very afraid, all right? So whatever was happening in the dream, I could still feel like leftover vestiges of fear. And one of the things that really popped out for me was that I felt that money was never going to solve the problems of the situation I was in. And I went, oh, wow, that's really like something I want to hold on to and see if that trauma response is playing out in my life, okay? So one way to tell that if you're waking up from nightmares, which is your amygdala and your brain going, oh, wow, we can process this now, is to have a book beside your bed, wake up and try and read it, okay? So I did this morning. And sometimes we don't know that we're having nightmares. We don't know that we're holding our breath extensively during the night, okay? So this morning I woke up and I picked up my devotional book and I'm trying to read it and I'm like, and I literally could not read the book. And I went, okay, so there might have been nightmares. I've obviously been holding my breath during the night. So off to gym I went. And of course now I do gym. That's for me, it's walking and it's half an hour of intentional breathing. So focusing my mind on my breath so that I know if I hold my breath. And that retraining of the brain is so essential because then during my day now, if I start to hold my breath, I can become aware of it. So we want to bring that awareness into our conscious daily life. And then I come home and do trauma-informed movement, which is more training the brain. So we've got to train our brain to do this type of thing. Otherwise, we don't know when we're holding our breath during the day. We don't know that we're holding on to unprocessed trauma, and so on and so forth. Another thing that I do is make a list. And if I can't follow the list in order, I'm aware that the dissociation is happening as well. Because one of the things that happen is our prefrontal cortex, which is our center of order, is offline. So it makes it really, really hard to get the day in an order, okay? So I want you to think about what you want to do. I want you to think about seeing your specialist and how you want to be able to get out of the dissociative state and how you want to reconnect. And then the question becomes, how did I adapt in order that I can, once I know how I'm adapting to things, I can then turn it around and start saying, right, I've got to retrain the brain muscles into that. I don't need to go into adaptation mode all the time. For me, when things are good, I need to be able to go, right, I'm aware that my brain will do this, will go offline and will go into dissociation. So now I've got to put in place structures and strategies so that I can move through that adaptation that's been there since I was a kid. Okay, I hope that helps a lot, and thanks for joining in, girls, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.